You have to forgive yourself in order to create a new identity that is more in alignment with abundance. Welcome back to the Dream Builder series. We're still in phase two, and we're still talking about how to activate abundance. And today we're talking about forgiving. Even dissecting the word forgiving, right? You're giving one perception of yourself, of your old story, of who you've been, let's be real, of a underdeveloped, a younger version of yourself. You are giving up those ways. And once you know better, right? You do better. And once you are ready to let go of that old identity, which means being somebody who does certain things, right? Everybody's always talking about identity shifting. Everything starts with identity. Yes, let's break it down, right? Your former identity did certain things. And many times when we evolve out of it, or when we want to evolve out of it, we then realize, ugh, that was cringy, right? That was embarrassing. That was something that you now, in a more evolved and a more mature and a more powerful version of yourself, you want to distance yourself from. But many people can't really make the leap into that higher version of themselves without letting go, without forgiving. Forgiving is just another word for letting go, because you're giving it up. You forgive yourself. I think it's, for me, it's always very interesting, and I like to break it down like that, because this just shows us, like, very in a very picturesque way, how transformation works, right? Because what I'm teaching is personal transformation, self mastery, dying to a version of yourself to be reborn into a new version of yourself, or even having, like, the picture of Transformers, right? The movie, like the play thing. It's like one form, and then it just transforms into the next version. And that's exactly what we do in a very conscious way. And what I'm teaching you is a formula, a proven, repeatable formula, a system of transformation. And I'm sharing a little sneak peek into the principles. If you really want to dive deep, of course, it happens behind the paywall inside the real extended program. But even with this principle, you will understand on a deeper level what has to happen. I just posted a few videos on Instagram. If you haven't checked out my Instagram yet, I invite you to also check that out on Instagram, Healing into Femininity. And I just posted a video speaking about me and also admitting something embarrassing about myself, which I believe is a very common transition for, hopefully, more women than not, is to understand at one point that you, and I'm talking about me, I have been, because I was in lack. We're talking about abundance, right? A lack of trust, a lack of self trust, a lack of trust in life, a lack of trust in my own abilities, a lack of trust in that there is enough time for me to accomplish the things that I set myself out to accomplish, right? So, giving a little example about lack, because lack is the opposition of abundance, right? So, I spoke about me being a student of these principles of life for, like, very deeply for the past 10 years. And even though I had been like highly invested, already been certified as a life mastery consultant. By the way, this is my brooch and I'm representing it 100%. Is the flame, is a fire flame, the triple flame. And it's about igniting the fire, right, of your life force. That's what I'm ultimately speaking about. And I have still been, of course, been hit by life. Like business was slow. I started like not believing in it. I had to find new ways of making money. And part of it, and I believe that that's true, that's why I'm always coming from a real point of view. My personal experience is that as a woman, especially as a beautiful woman with a certain level of highest self esteem, and just access, or let's say the magnetism to draw in high caliber men, because that's who I am. I get approached only by, or not only, of course, there's always men that are not in my league that approach me, but the men that I have been with are top tier, if we want to call it that, right? In the hierarchy of life. Athletes, and then later on, definitely business owners, right? Millionaires, celebrities, musicians. I have to admit, like, that's the kind of, like, I am the target for them, or whatever you want to call it. They want access to me. I wanted access to them. But for me, it was still somehow on a level of lack, right? Where I thought, okay, I still believed, and why I'm saying lack here is there was still something inside of me, like the little naive girl that we are needing to grow out of. That's my mission here on this platform as well, for women to step into their abundance timeline, to become self mastered, to create money from their knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, right? So the little girl inside of me, the still naive girl inside of me who believed that by ways of attaching to a powerful man, I would be saved, right? Or I would, yeah, be freed from the burden of life. But that's not how it works. Like those men, that's my experience, they still, of course, want something from you. And if that's not necessarily something that I freely want to give, it's still a dependent relationship, right? It's still based on dependency, especially from my side, because men with money, that's something really. Men with money know the power dynamic. So they will choose. And even though like I am not a typical just beautiful girl, man sense my smarts, but they will still try, and it worked, right? So this is where I had to learn myself more, right? Because I believed that I was a solid woman, but inside of me was still this little girl, and a powerful man will always try that. And it happened. Like I attached myself, and I got burned, and I left it, and I thought, no, I know that I can build on my own. So telling you that I'm no longer her, but like just by telling the story is also a form of releasing, right? Releasing that version of myself without shame, without guilt, because I am no longer her. But we need to do that. We need to acknowledge our old ways. We need to acknowledge what kind of survival tactics we ourselves um, applied to maybe get a certain outcome that was rooted in delusion. And another story, right? Like that's the really like literally he was a millionaire and he has status, he was famous, and like everything that comes with that, right? Like being on TV, being famous, being in the like the haute level of doing things. And there was one story, and then there was another story where I really realized that where I understood that what most women are saying on the internet, that like the narcissistic abuse and blah blah blah. I myself went into a situation where I had to, like, there was a pull inside of me, a pull inside of me to figure out, why was I so attracted? Why was I so drawn to that person? And I followed the impulse. And then I realized, and he also, like, he told me that other women called him a narcissist. And this is, of course, that's when I realized, okay, like, yeah, he could be seen like the ultimate narcissist, right? Like charismatic, good looking, powerful, and so on and so forth. But this is when I realized that ultimately all people are narcissistic, and especially men are narcissistic. And because so many women are deeply, deeply infantilized and in their victimhood, they will blame and accuse, like, this man took advantage of me, and so on and so forth. So because I knew that dynamic, mind you, I have been a transformational coach for 10 years now. I'm very aware of all of the psychological principles, spiritual principles, and so on. So I was very aware of it, but still, my human nature, my own programming, or my nature took over, and I engaged in a situation. And when I left the situation again, I observed myself and how the whole situation played out. And this is when I realized that that's exactly the moment where I could choose to say he's a narcissist, but I didn't, because yeah, he probably has narcissistic tendencies. And this is when I learned about like overt narcissism, right? And then covert narcissism. And this is where I realized I was a covert narcissist. Right? I was a covert narcissist, like, because I engaged in this situation because I wanted something out of it. Right? And women always accuse the men that they want something out of it, but women want something out of it too. The man probably, like, he wants your life force. Maybe that's why it feels so bad for women, because a man will literally suck you dry energetically. You will get confused, you lose your footing, and you will be destabilized as a woman, especially as a woman without structure and already a purpose and a plan and a vision for her life. So, with that being said, I experienced it myself firsthand. My nature, my underdeveloped female instinct nature, wanting to attach myself to a powerful, good looking, like strong, charismatic, visionary, creative entrepreneur man. I mean, I don't even blame myself at this point. It was a younger version of myself. I engaged with that, and I burned, right? And then I realized, okay, this is like what other women are saying is like, it's is most of the time I believe it's bullshit, because I take responsibility and accountability for my own actions. I am self-responsible, because that's what it means to be on the path of self-mastery, self-actualization, self-realization. It's about 100% accountability and responsibility for my own actions. And one of the things on the path of self mastery and self realization is you cultivate self awareness. And self awareness is the skill of observing yourself while you are doing things, not only in retrospective, but while you're doing it. And when you have like a blueprint or a moral compass or your own set values that is your moral compass, you will know when you are not in alignment with those values. You will see it because you've already defined your values. And everything that I'm saying here, and I'm not only sharing my perspective, but I'm also sharing you the formula. Go back to one of the first videos of this series where I speak about testing if the dream is really yours, because one of the questions of the test is it in alignment with my core values? And you make up your own core values. Nobody's giving them to you. This is your freedom. But I know my core values. So back to the story, I knew my values and I knew I was violating my own values while being self aware of myself. And again, this is where I see that most women are just like talking trash. And that's why, like, I really don't really identify with being an influencer or just a random person on the internet. Like, I am whatever, you will find out, right? So, but what I want to say here is that I've grown out of those tendencies, but only because I have set out who I want to be and I've defined my own values. And then I observed myself violating my own values. This is where I had my proof. It's no longer a theory, it is no longer like something that I heard from somebody or whatever. This is where I made a real life experiment with myself. So I know the kind of men that I'm attracted to. And I knew what I wanted to get out of it. And that's why I know feminine nature, because I'm a feminine, I'm a female, I'm a human. And telling that now, because again, I'm no longer her because I am at a different stage in my life, but I had to forgive myself. And I believe that this is the key to actually easily forgive, because what I realize more and more is that the number one block to self actualization or even to growth, right? The number one block for people is not being honest enough with themselves to admit that they have been trifling themselves, right? That they have acted out of survival mode, that they have acted morally inferior, right? That they have acted out of manipulation tactics and whatever, like all of the insults that we like to give to others, to realize, oh, it applied to me too. Oops, oops, I have been a bitch. I have been a covert narcissist. I have been a siphoning motherfucker. I have been her. And I believe the thing that helps us to actually really grow out of that is to admit and to forgive, because it's gonna, and I'm not speaking this into existence. This is not gonna happen again because I have seen my weaknesses. And this is also another thing. You can only really know your weaknesses exactly through this process. When you have set yourself out to be a certain kind of way, then you observe yourself actually violating your own values because you were weak. And then to admit it, I was weak. I was weak, and this is my weakness. And I can admit that. Men are my weakness, my only, like, or they have been my only weakness, and probably still are, depending on when a really powerful man is going to cross my path again, right? But apart from also another self-actualized powerful man, I know I'm solid, right? That is the, how you call it, like that's the ultimate um That is the dragon. Right? I like to use the analogy of the hero's journey, and we all have to like master the levels, right? And we have to be on this path, and we have to collect the wisdom, the stones of wisdom, the diamonds, the gold nuggets, right? And then ultimately we will face like the last enemy, the most brutal enemy, like the dragon, before we can enter the gates to the next level, right? And for me, it is ultimately, and I believe actually for every woman on her self actualization journey, it is a man, not just some basic ass weak man, but a powerful man, another powerful man who is hopefully or probably also self actualized. So I can say that that's my weakness. I'm using myself an example here. I hope you're still following, right? I'm not just talking about me to talk about me, but to make a point and to be honest and to go back to the point of this video. And it's about self perception and letting go, like actually first seeing yourself, being honest about you not being in alignment and in integrity with yourself, and then therefore you having to readjust, but also collected another piece of wisdom of yourself. And wisdom is knowing what your weaknesses are, right? So not only your strength, but also your weaknesses. I think maybe that's even as valuable as knowing your strength. So I had to let that go. I had to see it. I had to forgive myself. And I had to shed that skin and to be like, no, like that's not the woman I want to be. I don't want to scheme and plot and manipulate, not even on a not even on a subconscious level, not even on an unconscious level. I don't want to be her. So I forgive her and I let it go. And depending on where you are on your path, on your journey, you will have to forgive yourself for a lot of things. For a lot of things, you will have to forgive yourself for a lot of things on that journey to self mastery, because you have to now take responsibility on a new foundation. So, forgiving is a successive repatterning of your identity. It's about acknowledging your ways, not being good with money, not being good with men, not being responsible, right? Being a bitch, being being backstabbing even with women, right? Like, are you who you say you are? That is it. That is ultimately speaking about identity, right? Because that's why for most people manifestation work doesn't work. Because first of all, you got to be healed. That means you have to step out of being a child, right? Because the real healing happens in the formative phases of life. Like, this is where the wounds are inflicted, the mother wound, the father wound, right? The childhood wounds of being abandoned, right? Being neglected, being betrayed, like not feeling worthy enough, not having enough. All those things were like programmed into you since birth, or maybe even since being the womb, and then in the early stages of life. And in order to mature, you have to tend to the inner childhood work, and then mature and grow from it, right? And all of the wounds that you had as a child, you carried them through later childhood, then teenage years, young adulthood, and all of those wounds create survival mechanisms, right? Like you just plot and scheme through life. That is survival mode. It's not fully conscious, being fully conscious and actually also acting like that on the go. You understand? So successive repatterning of your old identity, or saying, letting it go, forgiving, laying it down, those old ways, to now recreate a new identity. And creating a new identity means stepping into that character, stepping into that moral compass, redesigning your values, and living in alignment with those values so you can say, I am who I say I am. I say, like, I am who I say I am. It has to be in integrity with that identity. Otherwise, people will feel it. That is energy. People will feel it. That's why it's so important to be loyal to your own word. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. Not only in the eyes of others, but also you with yourself. If you say you're going to do something today or tomorrow, you have to do it. Otherwise, you are not who you say you are. And that will create the leakage of your solidity, of of manifesting. Manifesting means making something invisible tangible, right? And even energy is tangible. People who are who they say they are, they don't need to plot and scheme. They don't need a lot of um, they don't need a lot of glamour and glitter. They don't need the loud noise and the bullshit, because they say it and they are it, and everybody can feel it. So that's it, right? So the topic again is stepping into abundance. We are in the second phase of the Dream Builder system, and it is about forgiving yourself, forgiving others for your shortcomings. You are human, and others are human too. But still deciding that from now on you're stepping into the identity that is in alignment or in integrity with being the next version of yourself, whether it is, and I'm mainly speaking about women making money, right? Especially like spiritual, intellectual, powerful, smart women who are stepping into the next version, right? So it is about forgiving yourself, right? Forgiving yourself, letting those old ways go, and redesign a new identity, a new way of thinking, a new way of talking, a new way of acting, a new way of, following your own command, making your own plans, and building self trust, because that is also ultimately what it's about, right? Letting go of an old version of yourself, seeing your weaknesses, and taking precautions to not get into the same situation again. And that is what happens. And again, like, we find the same lesson again and again until we master it. Until we master it. Oh Lord, right? And that's it. So once you observe yourself and you see how this leads to that, right? Being overly emotional leads to you speaking to somebody a certain kind of way, and in a high stake environment that led to the loss of somebody, or the loss of a business deal, or you lose valuable people, friendships, business relationships. potential partners. Yeah, right? Or doing other things, for example, drinking. If drinking doesn't sit good with you, and you have observed yourself enough times that maybe drinking too much leads to you losing control, leads to you being in an unfavorable situation for yourself. And the higher you ascend, the higher you go, the more you are in high stake environments. This is not the time to experiment anymore. This is not the time to lose yourself emotionally, or through alcohol, or through anything. It could be anything, right? You observing yourself, how certain behaviors or how certain emotions, certain triggers create certain uncontrollable actions, behaviors, words coming from you that lead to unfavorable situations. So I'm repeating myself, but I felt that there were more things that I wanted to tie into it. But ultimately, again, it is about stepping into the identity of yourself that leads to being able and capable to hold more responsibility, hold more money, right? And it's about acknowledging your mistakes, acknowledging your mistakes, taking responsibility for them, correct them, but also forgive yourself. Yeah, because the forgiving is releasing, letting go, forgiving. Energetic weight. That's what it's ultimately about. It's about letting go of that energetic weight, stepping into this fresh new start, being a newborn version of yourself that is now in alignment with a higher order of being, with a higher set of morals and also ways of behaving. That's it for now.